Hi guys, I'm Kayla. We're here today to talk about the May quarantine kits. If you have the quarantine kits from last month, I suggest that you use any of those supplies if you have them left over. And let's get started. We've got 2 canvases in this box, a big bag of soil, which we'll use later, paints, of course. We've got a light blue, a red, a light purple, and a white in here somewhere. We've got 2 flower pots, a couple of paintbrushes, of course, customized. We've got these gold leaf sheets that are wrapped up in here. They're really pretty, but we're going to use those later too, so you can set that aside as well. The adhesive, a couple of popsicle sticks, and some mystery flower seeds. Alright. I would suggest putting something down like some old newspaper so you don't make a mess, or else your table will look like mine does currently. But let's get started. Feel free to use your box as your palette. It's always nice to reuse, reduce, recycle when you can. Okay, so now that we've got all of our colors laid out, the first thing that I would suggest you do is to mix a couple of colors. It's a really good way to expand your palette, and mixing colors makes your painting a lot more interesting. So I'm going to mix my light purple here with the blue and see what we get. It's going to be kind of a darker, almost like a mauve color. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really pretty. And then also I think maybe mixing this, let's try the light blue and the red and see what we get. Yeah. Kind of reminds me of yogurt in a weird way. Anyways, alright, I'm going to get started. I really like this dark purple that was made by mixing the blue and the red, so I'm going to start with that on my canvases here. And since you have 2 canvases this time around, something you can do, especially if you're going to hang these, I would suggest doing them at the same time. You would be surprised how differently you paint depending on the mindset you're in. That's why I always say if you paint something and you don't like it, feel free to walk away, take a beat, and come back, because you'll create something completely different than what you created 30 minutes ago even. I'm actually gonna kind of blend this dark, this is almost gray, I really like. It's a really nice subtle color for the background, and I think what I'm gonna do is just blend from this dark gray to white. Just kind of use that as like a background color. When you're blending, it can be a little bit tricky, especially with such a dark color going into a light color. But if I have any suggestion, it's to really diversify your brush strokes. Like, don't just go up and down to blend, and don't just go side to side to blend. Do some crisscross marks. And actually what I probably should have done was start with the light color and blend into the dark color, but there's no going back now. As Bob Ross says, there's no mistakes, just happy accidents, right? Okay, that actually turned out pretty nice. I forgot to get a cup of water. I'm gonna be right back. Now that I've got some water here, I can clean my brushes as I use them. Really important to do, trust me. I have experienced the frustration of forgetting to clean my brushes, and then I come back the next day and they're all crusty and have to be thrown out, and it's really disappointing. I'm going to let these canvases dry for a minute, but while I do that, I'm going to paint my terracotta pots. Let me see. I really like this purple color. Reminds me of lavender. Feel free to design these and your canvases any way you want. I'm just being kind of messy with these. That's kind of how I am when I paint. I just kind of like to make a mess. It's usually how I describe my work, is it's just a mess. Those will be dry in no time. And our canvas, at least my canvas, isn't exactly dry yet, but that's okay. So something that I talked about in my last video was a little trick I like to do where I use two colors at the same time, but they're not necessarily blended. And I think I'm going to do that again with the blue and the purple. And this is how you do it. I'm going to take my fattest brush. This is an 1.5 inch wide brush. And I'm going to take one corner and blot it in the purple, and I'm going to take another corner and blot it in the blue. And I really like to start out with just kind of wild zigzag patterns over the canvas. And so it still keeps the integrity of each of the individual colors, but you also get this blending motion, especially the more you work your brush into the canvas, it blends a little bit further. I really like how that's looking. Clean this off. And another technique that I have talked about in the past is using the end of your paintbrush, dipping it in one of these colors. I really like to use white for this because it really stands out, and just making little dots. For some reason, the dots next to the lines, like the brush strokes, provide a different texture. And it almost competes with the texture of the brush strokes, but in a way that's really appealing to the eye. And I especially like, if I'm working with two canvases, to pretend as if one is bleeding into the other, so like it's a trail of dots from one canvas to the next, like a galaxy of dots. So something else that we can do, we're going to primarily use these popsicle sticks with the gold leaf, but they serve another purpose too. They can almost act as a cheap palette knife and give you a completely different texture, because you guys know I love texture. So for this one, I'm actually going to use the red and purple together, but I'm going to kind of mix it together like I did earlier. And I'm going to take this huge glob of paint and just like put it flat almost to the canvas and smear it across. And it's really subtle, especially the color difference. The color difference is also really subtle, but it does create an extra element. Like I said, feel free to just make a mess. That's my favorite way to create. So that layer that I just put on is pretty thick, and it might take a while to dry, but I'm still going to go ahead and show you guys my favorite part of this month's box, which is the gold leaf sheets. So everybody got 2. One thing that you should be worried about is these can be fragile. And that's okay if they break or if they kind of crumble in your hands. That's fine because they're still usable. But even if your hands are dirty, oily, or sticky, the gold leaf will stick to your fingers. And so just be really careful. Try to almost pinch it, or you can use tweezers. I'm a little bit too lazy for that, so I just gotta use my fingers and pinch the gold leaf between my fingernails. But let me see if these are dry. Okay, so it looks like my pots have dried a little bit, so maybe I will demonstrate the gold leaf on one of these. So I'm gonna take my adhesive here. This is clear dry adhesive, so even if there is some showing after we're done, it won't matter because you won't be able to see it anyways. So I'm just going to take my popsicle stick here, dip it in the glue, and just kind of smear it wherever I want the gold leaf to sit. So as always, make a mess. And you don't want the glue to be really thick on here. It'll just cause it to dry a little bit goopy, and it'll take a little bit longer. So, and then I'm gonna set that aside for a minute. The goal is to make it so that the glue is a little bit tacky, a little bit dried before you actually put the gold leaf on, because trust me, that stuff sticks to anything. And what we're gonna do is lay the gold leaf over the glue, let the glue completely dry, and then brush away the excess parts. Okay. I might just do like a whole rim of gold on this one because I'm truly obsessed with the gold leaf. It's so much fun. So I'm gonna let these dry for just a couple minutes. Keep an eye on your glue, especially you don't want it to dry all the way and then have to start all the way over. But once it's just tacky to the touch, then we'll come back and we'll lay the gold leaf on. And then maybe do some more work on our canvas too. I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Another thing I actually forgot to mention before we go away is these brushes that we just used, try to get them clean and let them dry because we will need them once it comes time to brush off the excess gold leaf. So yeah, just rinse them off with water and dry them a little bit. They should be dry by the time the canvas is dry. Alright, we're back. Time to move on to the next step. So, I'm going to start with the pots we put glue on. And like I said, just try to really gently as you can, take a tiny piece of this gold leaf. And sometimes you can successfully tear a small piece off, and sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate, but that's how life works. There's life lessons in painting, I promise. And I actually, it looks like my glue has already started to clear dry, but it is still tacky. It's still sticky enough that I actually think this is probably the perfect time. And something I actually like to do is, if I'm working on gold leafing one surface, I will, hold it over a different surface that I wouldn't mind getting a couple of gold leaf specks on, because as we do this, especially when we're going to brush off the excess parts of the gold leaf, the little flakes that come off as a result, they actually look really pretty, especially when they're randomly placed, and you can be surprised how just the tiniest bit of gold leaf enhances your work of art. Make sure it is stuck to all the places where you want your gold leaf to be adhered. We can set that aside. My fingers are covered in gold leaf now, but that's totally okay. And a couple more spots to cover here. Oh, it looks like a piece actually of gold fell off onto my wet part of my canvas, and that actually looks really nice the way it's randomly placed there. I wonder if I can make any more fall off of here. There we go. Just a little gold sprinkle. Another tip, if you love this stuff as much as I do, and maybe you don't have another wet surface underneath, and you want to save those gold leaf flakes, feel free to use whatever brushes off and keep it in a jar, because you can always use it on another art project. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, my fingers are covered. Okay, we're actually going to do the same thing to the canvas. So I'm going to take my adhesive and I'm just going to kind of drizzle a little bit of glue around with my popsicle stick, and then maybe move it around the same way I did earlier with the paint too. You'd be surprised. It actually, with the once the gold leaf is applied, it will really pop. So we're going to put quite a bit of glue on here and save a little bit for later, because we also have these little paper flowers that I included in everybody's boxes. Everybody's are different, and this is a really nice way, I think, to use what are called found objects in your painting. And that's just kind of a fancy way to say literally anything you can find, taking it and gluing it onto the canvas. Or sometimes I like to sew these in if you've got a needle and thread and feel a little bit dangerous. You can always sew these into your canvas too, but the adhesive will work just fine. Hopefully our brushes are a little bit dry. Yep, they are. So I've got my second piece of gold leaf here that I'm going to lay over the glue we put on the canvas. Sometimes you get lucky and it comes off in the perfect size chunk that you want to use. And the nice thing about this gold leaf is you don't need the adhesive to use it. Actually, just using wet paint and applying the gold leaf into wet paint that's setting works just as well sometimes. And it's totally okay if the gold leaf overlaps as you're putting it down. That's actually probably preferable. It'll make sure that that whole area that you applied glue to gets gold leafed and there aren't any gaps between. And I just use my finger to kind of pat it all down and make sure that the glue is actually connecting to the gold leaf where I want it to. Alright, now here's the fun part. Hopefully our brush is dry or dry enough. So I'm going to take one of my terracotta pots here that I've painted and applied gold leaf to and just really gently start to brush over those areas. And what that's going to do is get rid of all of the excess, all of the extra junk that isn't actually being held by the adhesive that we applied. And it makes a really nice smooth surface. You should be careful too, sometimes if the glue isn't dry enough, it'll actually tear the gold leaf off of places where you might want it to be kept, but you can always go back and apply more gold leaf over it later. Getting a lot of gold leaf flakes on my canvas. It's going to be really pretty once it's done, I think. Yay! I love this. I love the gold leaf. It just really brings paintings to life. Okay. That one's done. And I'm going to go and work on this little one too. Very pretty. I love how this is turning out. I almost don't want to put any dirt in it. Right. So I'm just going to brush a little bit of this off because there was actually kind of a lot that came off onto the canvas. Maybe a little bit more than I wanted. Alright, so I've got a lot of excess gold leaf here and some of it's actually stuck to my brush, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that off. But I do, like I said, I keep a jar of extra gold leaf because this stuff is so pretty. Who wants to waste it, you know? And you can always take this stuff and use it on any art project the same way we just did. Just apply a little bit of adhesive and sprinkle the gold leaf flakes on top and you've got yourself a gorgeous piece of work. Okay, I really like these are like cotton candy colors. They're making me hungry a little bit. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you guys is these little paper flowers that I included in each box, and all I'm going to do here is take again my popsicle sticks, get a little bit of glue and add it to the back and just stick it on wherever. Sometimes it can be helpful to go without the glue at first and place your flowers down and just kind of see what they look like in different areas. Like maybe I want to, you know, put these here and put this one here, and then I'm like, you know, maybe that doesn't look quite right. Maybe I'll put this one over here. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. Maybe I'll switch the black one and the gray one. And it's okay to test things out. I highly suggest actually testing things out before you actually glue them down. Especially with these flowers, they definitely create a focal point, something that is very difficult to do, especially with abstract paintings the way that I paint them. it can be tough to have a focal point, and so something that these flowers do is create an object for your eye to look at immediately the first time you see the painting, and then your eye kind of travels around the rest of the canvas and appreciates all the other aspects. But what these flowers do is just kind of enhance the viewing experience, and also, like I always talk about, it adds some texture too, which can be nice. So I really like how these turned out. They still need to dry a little bit, so I'm going to move these aside and we're going to plant our seeds. I think I've got gold leaf on my shirt too, so. Oh, that stuff's like glitter. Okay, you've got this big bag here of soil. I would suggest filling it up maybe 2/3, 3/4 of the way first. And these pots are a little bit small, but they're good for seedlings. So once your flowers start to sprout and they start to get a little bit bigger, you can always transfer them to a bigger pot and maybe use these for some other seeds. So I've got that. I'm going to add a little bit more here. And I have poppy flowers in mine. So I'm just going to do a couple of seeds in each. And just a light sprinkle of soil over those seeds that I just put in. It doesn't have to be too deep in the soil or too much on top. And there you have it. Don't forget to water these little guys. They need water and they need sun to grow, as all flowers do. Put them outside. They'll probably take a couple days to sprout, maybe a few weeks even, but they will eventually grow into big, beautiful flowers. If you would, I would love it if everybody would share pictures of the canvases that they painted or pictures of the pots that they painted online on your social media using the hashtag #MyKitCreation. Don't forget to clean your brushes. That is the most important thing. And the one thing that I always forget to do. And I'll see you guys next month.